What can we expect from Jos Buttler, the captain?
I think very similar things. Jos bats according to his personality. He's a very expressive guy. He always shows a huge amount of purpose. He's very authentic in everything he's ever done. And that makes me really excited. The timing is absolutely perfect for him to come in as captain, both for him individually, simply because the form he's been in, the way he's carried and been at the forefront of our white ball campaigns over the last number of years, but also his contributions to teams. He makes people better players by pushing them and being around them. And I think that's awesome. I think one of his biggest challenges is probably going to be getting to know the coach and building that trust initially with him. But that takes time, and you can't force it. So I think between now and the World Cup, that's going to be a challenge.
Over the years we've heard you talk, we're hearing you talk now, you're quite softly spoken, you're quite calm in the way you speak. What sort of style will he use in the dressing room?
His own style. Jos is a quietly spoken guy in and around the team. He's very direct in messages that he gives. Those messages are always very clear, which is great. You always want to know what direction your leader is going in, and you want to fall in behind him and learn as much as you can. But he sits on top of every other batter in the world at the moment when it comes to white ball cricket, and he's been an incredible leader in the changing room. We're going to see more of that on the field. He's very cool and calm. He makes great decisions under pressure, but also the thing that I didn't have or lacked, he is very, very feisty when it comes down to crunch moments. And that's something, shows he's hugely passionate, not only about his own game, but about the team as well.
Eoin saying there that one of his great challenges, Jos, will be to get to know the coach and develop a relationship there. What about the other challenges that he and perhaps the side are going to face over the next few months?
Well, those pressure moments, really. Now, Jos with the bat, you know how well he soaks up pressure. This man was great at those pressure moments. You only have to think of the World Cup final, and you think of Jofra Archer, you think of the Super Over, and him learning from the Ben Stokes moment in Kolkata, taking time out of the game to go and speak. Slightly different dynamic for Jos. He's got to go all the way from wicketkeeper to have that chat. He's also got to mould his team as his own team. It's not an easy act to follow. World Cup winning England's greatest ever white ball captain. All eyes will now be on Jos Buttler. Then there's logistics. Who's going to take his place? Everyone's focused in on him, the captain. And I know he's had a quiet 6 months, fitness and form, but he was a gun player as well. So is it Brook? Is it Salt? Who's going to come in? What they're going to do with Moeen Ali? Could be a good time for Moeen. Because of the amount of batters they've had, always like Moeen, you feel like he's a bit of an afterthought. And I don't mean it like that. I mean like you could get so much more out of Moeen. So what role will he play? And then the key one for me is the death bowling. And Jos mentioned it when we interviewed him at Trent Bridge. He said, well, everyone's struggling with death bowling, but we've got to get a bit better. Chris Jordan's form has just gone in the wrong direction. Obviously no Jofra, so the death bowling vital.
What about dealing with the whole package? I mean, you went through it, both of you, in different eras for many, many years. I mean, Jos Buttler is the leading player in the side. He's one of the best, if not the best player in the world. How does he deal with the media, the expectation, the job, and still do his job as we expect?
I think everybody's different. It's not an easy job to start with. The stuff outside of actually your day-to-day of batting or wicket-keeping, what Jos will do. But you need to manage it in your own way that feels right with you and sits well with you. Because if you don't, you find yourself chasing your tail or trying to be somebody else or trying to please everybody, which is not what you should feel that you need to do or the team needs.
If you look at the Blast, the domestic competition, which is now in the quarter-final stages, you speak to captains and you watch the game and you see 250 being scored, you see 261 for 2 being scored, you see records being broken. Where does this England side go now in terms of its approach to raise the bar a little bit? What thoughts have you got on that? Yeah,
I think you can put certain moments in the game under microscopes, certain matchups with different bowlers and batters. I think it makes the decision maker actually a key player when it comes to big moments in the game. You cannot miss them. You make a bad decision and bring a bowler on against a wrong player, you can have a massive swing in the game, particularly when you play against the very best in the world. So I think that's an area of worth exploring. But also I think, they played in a lot of finals, a lot of semi-finals. The more experience that they get and exposure they get, the more that they will learn. Because over the course of the last 6 or 7 years, we've proven that we're very quick learners. We're not afraid to grow, not afraid to be better players. And I think Jos will be at the forefront of that.
Any areas that you see that perhaps England are still saying, do you know what, we just need to get a little bit better at that?
Definitely the death bowling, and it's not easy. There have been times where they've gone wide Yorkers. Chris Jordan, Jofra has been brilliant. Jofra's a big miss. Maybe that's why Gleeson has been brought into the squad. He's bowled the most Yorkers in county cricket this season. He's used someone like Adil brilliantly towards the end of an innings. If you have a look at him, he's quite good towards the death, especially if you have left hand, right hand, and there is no match-up then because he is bowling googlies and leg spinners. It's not easy with that because the batters are getting so good now, but you can't just sit back and go, well, it's not easy. The semi-final that England lost, I don't need to remind Morgs about that. They got so close, and then at the end, just those last 4 overs, Mitchell took it away from you.
Yeah, Nasser, I think that's a great point. Adil Rashid is irreplaceable within the white ball setup. I think it's going to be a huge month or so from Matt Parkinson. He's played a lot for Lancashire, he's had a lot of success. But the ultimate test for him is going to be on the international stage. As an experienced leg spinner that Adil is, it's taken a long time for him to get there. Matt Parkinson is still very young. He needs to go out there, be exposed to some of the best players in the world, and hopefully grow and mould into the replacement that the team needs.
So that's the bowling. You're concerned a bit about the death bowling. What about the batting? You were talking to me off air a little bit about how you might, or how they rather, might just approach batting in the future. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I mean, when you're dealing with some of the best players in the world, you have an obligation to get the best out of them to try and increase your level of performance. And if that means a batter stays at one end at whatever stage of the game, it might be the first over of the game, and he faces 5 out of the 6 balls and he's trying to park him every ball because it leads you to discovering something new. I think it's something that England might look at some stage.
Or at any time in the innings. So is that just a specific matchup then?
So
give us an example.
An example would be, as a batter, you know who you like facing, where you score your runs, and when somebody comes on that you like, you naturally think, right, I'm going to take this guy down. I have to take this over for at least 10 in order for it to work in my favour. Because we have guys like Jos Buttler, Jason Roy, who can take overs for 25 and 30, that is such a huge swing in the game that you want to encourage them to go out there and take that particular bowler on.
I'm thinking that might have been quite handy in the years gone by when Shoaib Akhtar was steaming it. I might be saying to you, I'll tell you what, you've got a better match. I'll stay down this end and you'll go fine.
I'll take Razak, you take Akhtar. I'll take Michael Bevan, you take Brett Lee. Brilliant matchups.
Great idea.
Sounds like a great idea. I mean, that's where this man was good. That's where, they're already planning ahead. You go back to that World T20 where they won in the Caribbean, the slower ball bouncer, suddenly that became, other sides were slightly behind the curve. So this side will already be thinking about Australia. Will it be extra pace needed in Australia? Bigger grounds. What do you need? Not to win here. Obviously, we want to win here. But what are we going to need to win a World Cup, World T20 in Australia?
But that leads us on, really. When you're picking squads, or when you were picking squads for these games, these series before a World Cup, are you thinking venue-based? For instance, if it's subcontinent, are you thinking we need to fill our squad with different type of players, to Nasser's point about Australia?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and you should never lose sight of the goal of what you're trying to achieve, and the goal for this team is T20 World Cup in October. So you need to jot down your best 11 in roles as opposed to names, and then you go to names. You go 3, 4 people.
Fascinating when you're explaining that.
Yeah, so people think you just jot down names the whole time. You don't. You write down 1 to 15. You write down the specific roles that you need in certain conditions or to beat the top teams. Because we're not just going there to try and win the odd game. You're going there to beat the best in the world, and you need to have strength and depth in key roles and areas that when you're at a World Cup, you rely on these guys.
So you've got a role, and then you're looking for the player to fill that role.
Yeah, sure. And actually, that's where you earn your crust a little bit as a captain and as a coach. Not losing sight after you might get belted tonight or on Saturday and Sunday, but yet you still have to keep in mind the long-term plan.
As opposed to us, you'd open for 3 years. Bumble went, you're not playing. Nash, you've never opened before. You are playing. That was last minute.
Where was he all those years ago? You talk so much sense.